Welcome back to Oklahoma Sooners Live number 116. I am Jason Watkins filling in this week for Mark Rogers and Jason Ray, along with my co-host and the host of the star of the PG show, Mr. Preston Gant. Thank you for joining us, Preston. How's it going, man?
It's going good. Just bought my tickets for the softball game tonight, so ready to see Oklahoma start their journey to capture national championship number 3. I say journey. I guess they've already started it, but it don't really start until you're in the championship game.
Man, it's been a lot of fun, right? Watching this team just kind of do the things that they're doing. Obviously this is a football show, then we're going to talk about that. But I mean, even Jason Ray, he's one of those guys that he's really following this team and what a run they're on, man. And broke the record. They haven't lost a game since before conference, and they lost to a conference team, but it was in a tournament. So what a freaking deal, right? Have you enjoyed this?
It's been an enjoyable run, and I would love to see them carry this streak going into next year and see just how high this streak can get. I don't think it surpasses 100 games, but it's definitely going to be a question everybody asks. Like, if we go into next season, can it surpass 100 games?
Right.
This has been an incredible run. I asked this question the other day, but I was like, hey, like when you look at this Oklahoma team and you look at Patty Gasso, right? Like, is this the most dominant college sport coach we've ever seen in any sport? Because we've had the Nick Sabans and
Gino Auriemma.
It's like
yeah.
we didn't go into the season going, yeah, it's championship or bust for Bama. Like you expect them to you want them to win, but at the same time, like you always saw 3 or 4 other contenders that could knock Alabama off. And for Oklahoma softball, it's like we sit here and ask the question every single week: who is going to beat Alabama, or who's going to beat Oklahoma? And so we haven't been able to figure that out yet. So I look at
man, it's crazy too, right? Because and that's what makes it kind of so important to me is that when you look at this, is they did come in with all of this on their head, back-to-back championships already, a three-peat would be, and to do it in this fashion. I mean, how many 2-strike hits and the clutch? Have they gotten this over this stretch of all these wins? Just been, listen. If you appreciate greatness, you should be appreciating this. And I know there's a lot of, noise and stuff, but there always is for these kind of programs, and that includes your Alabamas and you think of Gino Auriemma went on a run like this. So it's the only people that you can really compare this to is like John Wooden and Gino Auriemma, that to have that long of a win streak in your sport. And to do it in the fashion that they've done it, number 2 UCLA, they go out to California and beat the brakes off of them. You know what I mean? And they just went all around the country doing this. And a lot of it, it's pretty insane to me, man. It's pretty insane to me. I say, way to go, Coach Gasso, in this program. And we're definitely behind you. You get it started tonight. So it's going to be a lot of fun, right? I wish I was out there with you. That sounds like a lot of fun, PG.
It's going to be a lot of fun. So maybe some of this Sooner magic that's happened with the softball team will rub off on the football team. And maybe here in the next couple of years, we see Oklahoma start.
How did I know you were going to say that, PG?
Listen, I'm not going to lie. I think I talked about it last night, but I live in the golden age of Oklahoma football. I know nothing outside of Oklahoma just winning. And at least they've gone to national championships and they've gone to playoffs. But I honestly, I was really young when they won in 2000, so I don't remember that. I don't remember the one where they lost to LSU or USC, so thank goodness for that. But I do remember watching us lose to the Florida Gators in 2008. I'm just like, oh man, like I'm ready to experience it now as an adult and as a true OU fan now, that can really enjoy this, and I want to see Oklahoma go to a national championship. That's kind of where I'm at.
And I agree with you. And I think it's funny how, Hank's talking about they just watching the relentless pressure they put on teams. And this is, if you're talking about the softball program, that's what you got to look at, is that the things that they do and the way that they get it done is just, it's out of control. Like I said, all these times that it looked like they were about to lose a game. That Clemson deal, they had it. and they just came back and did what they had to do. You know what I mean? And in 2 strikes, hit a 3-run bomb like that. I mean, that is insanity. So it's just they're clutch. They don't feel the pressure that you're talking about there, Hank. It's like that this pressure, this softball team seems to make them better. And that's what championship teams really are about. They do not look pressured. They look like they're having a hell of a lot of fun to me.
Oh, they're having a lot of fun. They're having a lot of fun.
And
So
I think that this is what you definitely want to see this football team become if you are a fan of the Oklahoma Sooners. Let's talk a little bit about this recruiting. This is what you do. PG he's one of those recruiting insider guys. He talks to recruits all day long. And so I'm happy to have you on here. Talk to us a little bit about Bryant Wesco and obviously Sammy Brown. I didn't never really feel like Sammy was that close to being an Oklahoma guy. I know it stings a little bit, but to me, I think you got to temper your expectations with some of these players. And he was one of those guys I didn't have a huge expectation about, right?
yeah, I mean, I think the problem is we all set our expectations with kind of the things that we were hearing about. Hey, Sammy Brown said that this was the best visit that he had ever taken, and then we started giving him Brian Bosworth comparisons, which I'm not gonna lie, which I get it. I understood during the On3 event, he specifically said NIL wasn't really going to be a huge factor into his recruitment. But I'm like, if you're Sammy Brown, there has to be some sort of thing that goes in the back of your mind that says, if I go to Oklahoma, I literally can play the role of Brian Bosworth for this football team and do an endless amount of commercials with him. I mean, if you're any car dealership, you're any big time organization in Oklahoma, you're trying to put Sammy Brown up there with Brian Bosworth. So I don't know if they ever pitched that idea, but that should have been an idea to pitch, right? Because I feel like that could have been a selling point to go to Oklahoma.
Sure.
Yeah, we're not offering you a bunch of money, but look at the potential money you could earn just by coming and playing
kind
here.
of playing that role. Yeah.
You're going to be developed. But ultimately, I think we got our hopes set too high because, one, I think this linebacker room is really, really good. If you look at Clemson, it's really, really good. But this year, they're going to be departing Trenton Simpson and Barrett Carter. So there's going to be a hole at Clemson at linebacker. So with Sammy Brown, it's like, I think at Clemson, it's an instant step into the role, which he's also been there more times than even anybody has even logged on any of the recruiting sites because he's been going to Clemson since he's like in elementary school for camp. So I think we just set up this false narrative in our head that like we had a better shot than we actually did. We were in a third place, maybe a fourth place, but it was a long third. Like you look at the distance between probably Georgia and Oklahoma, and I think it was a pretty big gap. The problem is with Sammy Brown going to Clemson versus Georgia, and I know everybody's like, well, I'd rather him go to Clemson than Georgia is. Well, Georgia's now going to have to amp up their recruiting for another linebacker, and they've had Justin Williams on campus. And I think this is where we have to start focusing now and going, okay, well, how does this now impact Oklahoma recruiting? Well, Justin Williams attends the same high school, is on the same team as one Joseph Jonah Ajonye, who is now I believe, a top 60 prospect in the 247 composite rankings. And so, Georgia's thrown out that offer to JJA.
Oh, I'm sure.
He's really talked up that visit to Georgia.
Yeah.
Justin Williams currently has an official visit set to Georgia on the 23rd. If Georgia now goes and lands Justin Williams, I think it, one, becomes a more attractive destination for Joseph Jonah Ajonye. But two, if maybe he's still not sold at that time, maybe Joseph Jonah Ajonye commits to Georgia, and now JJA tries to get Justin Williams to commit there. I think this is going to have other ramifications for Oklahoma on the recruiting trail. And unfortunately, I think it puts Oklahoma behind the 8 ball for a really talented defensive lineman in the recruiting trail. We'll have to see exactly, though, just what this relationship with Todd Bates looks like for JJA. And if Oklahoma can continue to leverage that, hopefully getting him on campus for an official visit can maybe re-secure those ties with Oklahoma. But I'm not going to lie, Sammy Brown going to Clemson has scared me a little bit with how Georgia's pursuit is going to be for Justin Williams.
That makes a lot of sense, and I get what you're talking about. And you can a lot of these you see a lot of this going on, and it always has. But with recruiting, familiarity is a good thing for a lot of these kids. They just know that you know what I mean. That just seems like one of the things that's very important when you start thinking about that familiarity. They're going to go after some of these teammates, guys they played with, guys they trust, and that linebacker defensive line. We talked about it last night on the show, right? There's that relationship between those two positions. One feeds the other one. You know what I mean? And if you've got a guy like JJA that can, plug up that inside part that and take up blockers, that allows linebackers to move freely and be able to make plays. So, the beauty of we talked about this a lot. The D linemen, they don't always get a bunch of sacks or a bunch of, measurables as far as that goes, but they are so important for those linebackers. And if he's already playing with JJA, why would you not want to make that move?
And for Georgia, I know a lot of people go, well, hey, Georgia offered JJA over after Oklahoma offered him, right, after he'd taken a visit to Oklahoma. And I'll say this. Georgia's in a lot better of position to not offer kids than Oklahoma is at the start, because for Georgia, they have a 5-star defensive lineman in their state, Edric Houston. Maybe for a while they thought they were in a good position for him and a couple other guys. Maybe now all of a sudden, maybe they think, well, we don't feel as good about Edric Houston, so maybe we need to throw another offer out to another top-tier defensive lineman to kind of give us a gap if we miss Edric Houston, which is a very good possibility. Edric Houston could end up at Clemson or Alabama. Both are very viable places for him. I think it's down between those 3 schools for him. So if you look at Georgia, I think they're doing this a little bit strategically. One, because they know they might miss on Houston, but 2, they know they need another linebacker. And I know some people will go, hey, well, they have a 5-star linebacker in DeMarcus Riddick. Well, that's true, but where's Riddick from? He's from Alabama. And there has been a lot of talk about how he might flip to Alabama. That's the truth. I don't think Georgia wants to go in to this cycle without a 5-star linebacker, especially after losing Nolan Smith and guys like that into the draft. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly how Sammy Brown impacts the loss for Oklahoma, because Oklahoma potentially could lose another guy out of this, potentially one that actually hurts a little more than Sammy Brown, because JJA, I think, is a guy that was almost a lock for Oklahoma for a while until he got on the campus of Georgia.
Yeah. And that's where the beauty of it is where we really feel like listen, we can talk about losing guys like that or because there's any number of things that could happen. And I agree with you. It's easy to make that connection. What I would also say is that Oklahoma's in on a lot of these guys, those defensive line guys. You don't want to see them losing a bunch of them. I know, especially after Za'Davian Sims chose Oregon. Another one of those guys for me, I didn't really ever feel like that was going to be as big a problem. Now, Matt, I understand this. I definitely understand what you're talking about. But I would tell you that in my whole thing is, and I know that I don't want to sound like a broken record, but the truth of it is you guys, we all have to realize that December's a ways away. There's a lot of things that are going to happen. Do you want to see some of these? To me, I feel like last year, you remember right around this time, early part of June, everybody's a little worried that, you only have a few, right? That are even have committed, and they're not these 5-star guys. Well, that's because they haven't committed anywhere yet, a lot of them. And I still think David Stone is probably I know you were talking about it the other day. You want to give your percentage here. I feel like he's definitely right on the cusp of being an Oklahoma guy. I still feel the same way about Williams one area as well. And even though, my favorite of these guys has been Nigel Smith, but I'm concerned, like you were talking about last night, Ohio State on that one. But I see them still getting 2 to 3 of these guys, right? They're going to, there's the guy from Louisiana. It's
Dominic McKinley.
Dominic McKinley, yes. What are your thoughts about that?
Personally, I don't think Oklahoma is as in a bad a position as people think. People are saying, hey, I'm worried OU's missing on some players. Is OU really missing if the guys never came on? If OU is getting these guys on for OVs and then they never commit, all of a sudden then I'm worried because I'm like, your OV is supposed to be the weekend, right? That's supposed to be the weekend that you roll out
Yeah.
the red carpet for recruit. That's supposed to be your pitch. Unfortunately, Bryant Wesco never made it on for an OV. And his sister left campus, so I don't think maybe the sister was as big of a factor into that because, well, she's at SMU and he's at Clemson. So, you never know. Maybe they could flip Bryant Wesco. Maybe Bryant Wesco thinks to himself here in a couple weeks, in a couple months, and says, "Hey, I made this decision too quickly. I made an impulse decision. I need to go out there and actually take the other visits and make sure I made the right decision before he ends up, which I don't even know if he can stay at Clemson at that point because he'd be breaking Dabo's policy, which is the same as BV's.
Same as BV's policy.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes
Right.
to the defensive lineman, I think you're right. Like I'm pretty much on the belief that Stone should be committing here pretty quickly. I mean, if you
Mhm.
look at everything he's doing, you read the tea leaves.
Right.
He's going to be in Oklahoma this weekend, not for an official, but for an unofficial to be here with Winery and some of these other recruits. He'll be here next weekend for the Champion Barbecue, and that's going to be so far his last scheduled official visit. Now, is it because he hasn't gotten a chance to get one scheduled with A&M? I am not. I am under the impression that if he wanted to take an official visit to A&M would have made it happen already. So the fact that there's not any other official visits on the schedule yet for him after Champion Barbecue,
Mhm.
that leads me to believe that potentially we could be seeing a commitment come down for David Stone here pretty quickly. Maybe even by the end of the month, maybe even at the Champion Barbecue. Might be a stretch for the Champion Barbecue, but I think we're going to see one here pretty quickly from him. But as far as the rest of the defensive line goes, I talked about it with you. If let's say you only land David Stone and Winery, and I mean, you could even take Winery out of this mix, but let's just say you land David Stone and you get Jaden Jackson, you get who's the other guys? Alex January from Duncanville. You get a Tyler Moore, one of the unranked defensive linemen in the composite. That's still a really good defensive line class. You might not get all the 5 stars in the world that you dreamed of, and
It's
maybe even.
historical if you're Oklahoma. You know
Oh
what I
yeah,
mean? It's look, and the thing that I always think I go back, and again, I don't get the reason that I don't dive as heavily into recruiting as like you do is because it's just, I like to talk about a lot of issues, but a lot of it has to do with the fact that you guys just have it down cold. And in the end, man, you just don't know what really is going to happen with these guys in 6 months. And 6 months is early signing day. So, it, you know what I mean? It's one of those things where you just got to kind of sit back and wait it out, But I do feel like I understand the nervousness there. You haven't seen a real defense in Oklahoma since Brent Venables went to Clemson. Really, and I think there was times that they were better than others, but you haven't seen that kind of sustainable defense, right? But what? Last year for OU getting truly top recruits. After that, it will all be battles with SMU. Are you what?
I don't know what kind of drugs you're on, but shoot it over to us because I'm not
I
used to
don't
that.
exactly. And Falabi Fel BV, is that what that is? Oh, okay. I see where you're coming from now. Look,
I
man,
like Mike Fox's
I
question.
think
He's
this is a
definitely stronger.
troll a bit, maybe, right?
Yeah, how we feeling if we don't get Stone and Winery? So, I mean, you've
Yeah,
heard
I
me
think
say it.
that's nuclear now.
Yeah, I mean, you've heard me say it. If we don't get Stone, I don't think it's going to be because Todd Bates' pitch wasn't good enough.
No,
It's
it's
going to
not.
come down to factors outside of money and football. So just keep that in mind. It's not going to be NIL. It's not going to be football. It's not going to be the staff. It is going to end up being something else. But that's not something I like talking about because it's none of my business. None of our business either. So if David Stone ever wants to address that, he can address that. Or if somebody else wants to, you can go watch those channels.
No, listen, I get that part, and we don't have to really
Yeah.
talk about that end of it. Again, we've talked, and I think that everybody here knows about it. I mean, there's a question about some of his decisions of who he hangs out with. It's from his mother. Hey, look, who in the world is going to tell his mama what she needs to be telling him to do. Not this guy. Not this guy.
Yeah.
Listen, I'd love to see him. I think that I see him becoming an Oklahoma guy. And I'm not one of those guys that makes these kind of predictions because they're kids, and they change their mind. But I think that growing up down there, he knows what it means to be a Sooner from Oklahoma. Gerald McCoy's recruiting the guy for you, like daily on Twitter. This is not. I just believe that you can. I think it's, even if it doesn't happen, I think there's a real reason why that is, right? And I don't think it's the end of the world, because then maybe you do get Nigel. I think if you get Winery and Stone, who is gonna go in there and want to compete? Now, I think Nigel Smith is one of those guys that might, right? But I also think that Ohio State is all over him, and I could see him headed that way as well. And Penn State, for that matter, seems to have made an impression with him at times, haven't they?
Yes. But if we don't land Winery, I still am not. I'm not as super worried. I mean, as long as Oklahoma, at that point, if you miss on Winery and you miss on Stone, then and miss is a strong word, but let's just say you lose on those two. At that point, I think it becomes more of a necessity at that point for you to land a Jaden Jackson, a Nigel Smith,
Yes.
a Joseph Jonier. At that point, you really need to land those guys. Those are non-negotiables at that point. But landing or missing Winery, I think that Winery situation has become a little bit of a different recruiting situation than everybody thought it was going to be at the beginning.
I think so too.
So, yeah, I mean, I think people need to settle down. It is only June. I know sometimes you'll see stuff from myself and other content creators. Guys, we are just that, content creators. So when OU misses on someone, yeah, we're going to make it a little dramatic because we want you guys to click in, watch our videos. And now, yeah, we're going to sometimes give it to you straight. But listen, we're going to create a little bit of drama there because we're content creators. That's what we are. So listen, it's June, it's July. Don't be too worried. If we get to December and all of a sudden Oklahoma has one defensive line commit, now yes, at that point we can start worrying and asking questions. But I think Oklahoma is going to be fine.
Listen.
The other thing is, I think a lot of people expected Venables and Todd Bates and the staff to come in and immediately turn around Oklahoma to a landing a top 3 defensive line class every single year and landing a top 3 defense class. And I look at that and go, those are unrealistic expectations because, one, they weren't going to be able to do anything in 2022. They can only build off the foundation that they had, that the guys that didn't take at Clemson and or guys that wanted to come to Oklahoma that Lincoln Riley didn't want to take. In 2023, you're not really able to leverage a whole lot of the relationships of the top tier guys that you wanted at Clemson because for years you sold those kids on going to Clemson. And now all of a sudden you have to change your tune and tell them Oklahoma is a better place than Clemson, when in reality it's probably not, because as we saw last season, this is a strip it down to the studs, rebuilding type of thing. Yep. A lot of those kids probably didn't want to be a part of that. You get into 2024 and this is where you're going to start to see a change in it. They're going to start to land some of those guys they had a relationship with because now they've had a couple years, or I say a couple, they've had a recruiting cycle and a half to actually start trying to shift that narrative of, hey, come to Oklahoma, but we're still not there yet. You give it the full 2024 cycle, and in 2025, I think is when you're going to see that shift to what they were doing at Clemson transfers to Oklahoma. But it takes time. This is not something where, they're going to be able to come in and just immediately sell these kids to come to OU when it's literally a rebuilding project. I mean, it's just how it is. And unfortunately, I don't think people want to hear that.
No, and I agree. And I'll tell you, the thing about it is just like Mike says, and if you're not a BV fan, I mean, I don't know. I'm not here to tell you have to be. But what I would tell you is that I don't know what you have of reasoning to not be at this point. He's recruited better than anybody up until this point. Look at he's got 2 cycles. He's 2 times in the top 10 and once in the top 5 in recruiting. He is bringing in and filling these holes. Now, I think that it's fair to question whether or not he is going to be a good head coach because nobody really knows that because he hasn't been a head coach. I think everybody Huh?
You want to know what it really comes down to is being a head coach. It's can you be a CEO? That's all this comes down to.
Of
Because
course.
I hate to tell you
But
guys,
there's a learning curve to it too. You
yeah,
know what
there
I
is.
mean?
This
There's
is not. I
even
mean,
if
it's
you've
like
been
any
if
job.
you've been coaching for 40 years.
Yeah, it's like any job. And I hate to tell you, you can't go to college to be head coach. It's not how that works. So this is a learning as you go type of thing. He might realize, hey, I made a mistake in hiring this person. And, maybe here in a couple of years, you see people get let go. He fine tunes his staff. It's a complete learning process when you get a new head coach. Would you rather have a new head coach in Lincoln Riley, or would you rather have a more established guy that might retire in 5 to 7 years, and then you're back in the same position to find a new head coach? By that time, Brent Venables might already be a head coach somewhere else and already have that program established. So
Right.
this is a thing where you're setting yourself up for success for the future. I know people want to win in the here and the now, but would you rather win here in the now and then not be set up for success in the SEC, or would you rather be set up for success in the SEC but not winning in the here and the now?
Yeah, and I don't think one has to be mutually exclusive of the other. PG, I mean, I feel like these guys are they've made significant changes to the entire team for that much. I think there's a couple of places you'd like to be a little stronger. Defensive line being one of those places. I think that you have made it stronger than it was when he got here, and just like Mike Hawk said, look, he took over a dumpster fire that was left. What was left there? You lose 2 5-star quarterbacks. You lose on a defense that really didn't have great success. It was better than the USC one from last year, but you lost a lot of those guys. 13 guys from that depth chart were gone. The guys that were it's a hard defense to learn when all you learned before that is speed D, where it's just read and react. It's a different thing, right? They definitely needed to be better. Sark's done a little better the last 2 years. Ha! Yeah, right, dude. He only won 5 games his first season, and he's done nothing but cough up leads after halftime. At least 8 or 9 of his 20 games as a coach at Texas or whatever it is,
Yeah, but I will say this though. It's funny how Oklahoma and Texas are almost in a very similar position. Have you noticed that? Has anybody noticed this? Like, okay, Oklahoma won one more game than Texas did the first year with their new head coach. So, yeah, I know we want Oklahoma to get. So what if they win 9 games? That only puts them again 1 win, but they're still improving on the rate. It's very interesting to see how Oklahoma pretty much is in the same position Texas was when they got Sark. I will say this though, Sark's doing an incredible job at Texas,
I think
and
Sark's doing
Texas is
great
on
in the
rise.
recruiting trail. I think that I agree with you. I'm not a big believer in Sark because I think that his coaching is an issue when it comes to after halftime adjustments. When the other team adjusts, which always happens, what do you do? And he's proven that he doesn't do that as well as some of these others. Now, of course, neither has BV. He's not done this yet on that level. So I'm not hating on Texas.
Well, yeah, because that's been my biggest complaint about BV, which is
they definitely need to
the freaking 3-man front you want to run doesn't work yet. You don't have the personnel. Stop trying to do it until you get your personnel to do it. It's like Sark. I think Texas fans, they get so upset because they're like, Sark can't make this. Well, one, Sark probably doesn't have the personnel to do what he wants anyways. And it's up until this last class did we go, see, Texas has got that personnel now. They put up a top class and still addressed needs, which is something funny. It's like Texas and USC, they land these top classes every year and then they don't do anything. But it's because they don't address needs. Now, all of a sudden, they've addressed needs. And I think you're going to see Oklahoma in the same position. They're going to be landing top classes. And it's until they address the needs, which right now is defensive line. Once they address the needs, you're going to see an improvement for that team. So we'll see. Maybe Oklahoma has a different path to a championship than Texas, but I think the expectations is we should see Oklahoma at 10 wins this year. You should see Texas probably at 11 wins. You should see both of them in the championship game, and then from there, I think it's all upside.
Yeah, listen, I think that with these schedules, you can expect it's fair to have some high expectations in this last year in the Big 12. I think when you're trying to prepare to be an SEC program, you do need to make these moves like what they're making. They are even, we kind of talked about. Well, I want to kind of address this question. I, listen, this is the defense that works at the national level and winning national championships.
It
Did it?
stops Lincoln Riley.
Lincoln Riley got his ass kicked by it twice, right? I mean, he did. So the bottom line is that, and whether or not we like it or not, who cares? I think that there's good parts of it, of every defense. I think, you know what I mean. But what I do about the 3-3-5 is that you're trying to put a lot of pressure on, quarterbacks, play callers, passers. That's
Exactly.
the
Because
the
teams are
entire
onto a
point of
passing
it.
game.
And right.
Air raid. The whole reason why this is happening is because of Leach creating that air raid game, creating this air raid type offense. You have to, the thing is, it's if like they're going to pass the ball 70-30, then yeah, why would you dedicate 4 or 5 guys on that defensive line every time? That's stupid because you're going to get burnt in the backfield every time.
Right. Now listen, and you saw it last year. Whenever they couldn't get enough pressure on quarterbacks, if they were mobile at all, you didn't have a guy like Deshaun McCullough playing the cheetah. I think I think that there's a lot of really good things that you can do. They're recruiting high in intelligent kids, football IQ kids, and stud athletes that they've got pipelines into these rooms in these places in Florida and in Texas. So to me, are they going to lose to some of the, but who are they losing these guys to? We're not talking about anybody that they're not losing to Texas State. You know what I mean? We're not talking about losing to even Baylor on any of this kind of stuff. You don't, or Okie Light. Sorry, Oklahoma State. These guys that they're losing to Alabama and Georgia and Clemson. These are the national title contenders. That it's, I think that you have to kind of consider that whenever you think about it. And if you're going by the numbers, he did the same that you just said about Sark. They're recruiting based on need and culture and in trying to build the whole team. It's not just about getting a bunch of receivers and a quarterback. It's addressing the things that they need. Until they've proven it at Oklahoma, you can say whatever you want to say about whether you like it or not. I mean, it's up to you guys what you think on that. But to me, I know that it's worked, and he had a top 10 defense 8 of his last 10 seasons at Clemson. And they sent a bunch of guys to the first round of the draft. And, to me, the other 2 years of those 10, I think they were in like the top 40 or something like that. So it's not like they were trash. They were the first 2 years though, they were a little hard there. That's kind of how it is. It is definitely tough for some of these kids to pick up. But once you've been there for a year or two and you are recruiting the guys that are meant for that system, it should get better. And I think that that's the main thing you have to hope for is that, yes, did somebody said about game management in here. I don't know. I think Phil Bellevue, I don't think you're a fan, dude. I think you're just busting chops. And I think that OU and Texas meet in the championship game. Yeah, I think that it's okay. They should. They have 2 of the easiest schedules in the conference. As far as who they're going to play, who they're not going to play. I think Texas leaves the state of Texas twice, right? The entire season. And of course, Oklahoma only leaves it 3 times. And one of those times is to Dallas, which is Okie South,
Yeah. I mean, though, leaving the state of Texas, though, that's like Oklahoma driving to Kansas. I mean, you could drive in the state of Texas for 9-10 hours.
That's fair, but it's still, they're not having to leave the state of Texas, and they're not driving anywhere. So,
that's true.
But I would just think that, to me, I agreed that they could get there. I think that if you saw some of the things that happened with officiating all through the last year, I've kind of cautioned people that I'm not too sure that they're really going to just I don't know that they want to do it. I didn't say that I think that BV's game management was great. I don't think that, but I also think that again, we just talked about this. There's a learning curve, no matter who you're talking about, and the guy has been a football coach for what, 40 years, 35 years, or something like that. The guy knows what he's doing.
Yeah, and he's only been coached by Hall of Fame coaches.
Right. Oh, so he lost a couple of guys to Dabo, who was one of his mentors, and is still, he's won multiple national championships and been in 4 playoff championship games, winning 2 of them. So, I mean, look, that just doesn't rub off on the guy. Come on, Coach Stoops.
Are we really going to complain though about losing Sammy Brown? Are we really going to put that on this staff? Come on, guys, really? Like, we're not really putting that on them,
right? When are we building the new facilities? That's coming up, right? I mean, the money's already spent. It's there. They got, look,
they can listen. They got to finish.
They're already top 5 in the country, and they're just supposed to be going to the SEC. They're on their way. They're not even there yet, and they're recruiting in the top 5. The kids that want to be professional football players want to play in the SEC. It's only going to get better, right? I don't know. Anyway, we don't have to continue with that. Let's talk about something that's kind of on a positive end of this when you start thinking about it. The 2025 class, we were talking about that a little bit off air. Talk to me about what you think about that, because for the momentum that everybody seems to be worried about for 2024, this 2025 class is starting to kind of perk up a little bit. And 2024 there's a couple of things we can talk about with that, like with Devon Mitchell. But listen, 2025, you start off with Kevin Sperry, the 5-star, and let's talk about what that could turn into, PG.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure you guys have heard Brandon Drum over at Rivals talk about it a whole lot, which if you guys aren't subscribed up there, you guys need to go subscribe. You guys need to be watching OU Insider. But you've heard him talk about it. Oklahoma, in terms of what they're going to be putting out on the recruiting trail in 2025, it's absolutely insane. We have an edge rusher in Weatherford, Oklahoma by the name of CJ Nixon, who could literally be a 5-star edge rusher that's in Weatherford, Oklahoma. That's absolutely crazy. Then, not to mention, you have Jaden Nickens, who is a wide receiver that's going to be wanted by everybody. You have Nate Roberts, a tight end from Washington, Oklahoma, that's getting elite offers across the board. Then you have Tristan Haynes, the cornerback out of Carl Albert, who I think is definitely going to be with Oklahoma. And then you have Caden Knighton, who out of Wynnewood, Oklahoma, is absolutely balling, currently committed to Vanderbilt. I don't think that commitment sticks, especially if DeMarco Murray decides to continue to pursue that one a little bit harder. But you look at just kind of the guys they're getting on campus, like what they had last week when I was at the camp. You had a lot of your local kids, Tristan Haynes, Elijah Thomas, who's actually from Chakota, Oklahoma, who's picked up offers from Alabama, Texas A&M, a couple others. You've got, of course, Jaden Nickens. You've got the athlete CJ Simon out of Moore, Oklahoma, defensive tackle Devin Gillespie, defensive lineman Caleb Humble, edge rusher Josiah Hammond. Oklahoma is definitely going to be in a good position for 2025, just for the guys outside of the state. Or just for the guys in the state. But then you look at like a tight end that they offered at camp, Chase Lofton, who, guys, if you have not watched the video that I posted on Twitter of Chase Lofton, you got to go check it out, because he was literally doing that all day long, jumping up over kids, pulling that ball down. There were even some points where he was straight burning kids. So I think he's like 6'4", 6'5". I mean, he was outrunning kids. It's just the kid's extremely athletic. But then you look at all the future casts that are coming in for the 4-star wide receiver, Adrian Wilson. This is where it gets interesting, and this is what we were talking about in the green room. Because for the Oklahoma Sooners, I think right now the wide receiver position has kind of been the biggest, and outside of defensive line, it's been one of the biggest topics of conversation. What are we going to do about the future of that position? And if you land Adrian Wilson, you've already got Grayson Harris committed. So you'll have 2 wide receivers. Does Oklahoma take 3, 4, 5? Because they're certainly in a position to land 4 more after that. Jaden Nickens, you have Elijah Thomas, you have DeCorian Moore, and there's another one I'm totally blanking right now on the name. But there's another wide receiver as well. So you look at that and go, or it's Mosey, the
Mosey.
kid from
Yep.
these, yeah. So he's a legacy kid. So literally, Oklahoma could take, if they wanted to, 6 wide receivers next class. Probably not going to happen. It's probably going to be more down to, I would say, 3 to 4, depending on how many guys hit the portal this
Right.
offseason. But I mean, literally the 2025 class for Oklahoma, especially on the offensive side of the ball, you can start seeing a lot of these spots fill up pretty quickly. I think on the running back position, you're going to see the same thing, just another 2 running backs. So you get one committed, and I think you're just going to see the dominoes continue to fall. You're going to see kids, all right, well, I need to wrap this recruitment up, especially if I like OU, because I got to go in there and lock that spot up because somebody else is going to come in there and take it. And if you're not an in-state kid, your likelihood of ending up on the team, if you love Oklahoma at that point, becomes a lot harder. Because if you're an in-state kid and you're really good, they're going to find ways to put you on the team. They're going to find a position for you.
Sure.
So
Kind of like Brandon Harper and kind of, some of the walk-on kids. I mean, hey, look, it's going to take all kinds, and that's the whole thing about it. But when you're losing, again, first off, there's still a lot of time. Some of these things can get flipped. Look at Peyton Bowen last year. I mean, that was a masterful job by this recruiting class. And for them to come in at number 4, you get Jackson Arnold, you get obviously Brown not being in that wide receiver class for this season now because of the grades or whatever, and he's going to be at Garden City. But you still get Jacquez Petaway, and you still, you've got some guys through the portal that should be able to contribute on that end of it too. You have to take an entire look at this program and give it time to come together. Whether or not you feel like you in Fel BV, I tell you, this dude is a trip. But I can tell you now that they're working on 2024. I think we talked about this last night. Momentum could come from having a big season. You go into the last couple of weeks of the season and you're in the hunt for the conference championship, which you have to expect. That should help solidify and let a lot of these guys around the country know maybe where Oklahoma needs the most guys. So obviously you want to see more D linemen and tight ends and stuff like that. Like, let's talk a little bit about that too. Devon Mitchell, what is the latest that you're hearing about him? I know there's a crystal ball for him out there. Talk to me about Devon.
yeah, I mean, everybody submitted their crystal balls and their future cast at this point for Devon Mitchell. So
Right.
from what I understand, and if this isn't correct, somebody can jump in the chat and let us know. But from what I understand is you can't complete your reclassification until August. It's going to take till August. So basically what I was telling you in the green room, which is if Devon Mitchell's committing on July 8th, that means he's not going to be able to take official visits to all of these schools. He's going to be likely taking an official visit to just the one school, and that's going to be it. So Devon Mitchell, I feel like at this point is pretty sold on where he's going to end up. And I think all roads point to Oklahoma. I mean, he's got the relationship there with Mike Hawkins. And, I've been a big proponent of this on my channel, and I've even said it on Ties. I think Oklahoma lands Zena Yumi Owazulu, who, if you're familiar with him, was also a teammate with him as well. So, I think there's just a lot of roads pointing to Devon Mitchell going to be a Sooner. And I think that, on July 8th, you see that commitment come down for OU. In August, at some point, you potentially see that reclassification happen. And I don't know if he's going to be an early signing day guy or if he'll have to be a summer enrollee. I don't know how that works with reclassification. So, because I don't know how many credits he has.
Yeah. And man, that kind of tells you, when you're saying that, Michael Hawkins kind of pulling the same kind of deal that you saw Jackson Arnold being out front for this recruiting class. And that's what you want, a quarterback that's going to be a leader and go and get the leadership guys and the guys that he wants to. You like to see that, right?
Oh, but you don't just have one guy though. You have Hawkins and Kevin Sperry. That's what I think a lot of people are undervalued.
That's what I'm talking about. These guys are like building up
in 2 different years, recruiting the same guys. Like you're going to land guys. It's just with BV's policy, it's going to take a little bit for you to see these recruitments come down because at the end of the day, like, I want you to put your position. I want anybody in this chat, anybody that watches this video, I want you to put yourself in the position of a recruit. Your recruit You get a chance to take official visits to all of these different schools, be wined and dined. Now you can do it more than 5 times. Why would you not? Even let's say you're going to Oklahoma, no questions asked.
Right.
Do you still not want to go take other visits to other places, get wined and dined, be treated like a king at least once a week? I mean, come on. Like, you're telling me that you wouldn't do that? That's kind of what these kids are
Of
doing, right?
course. And
Most
you
of
know
these
what?
kids
He
go where
doesn't
they
ask them
go.
not to. He
Yeah, they
doesn't
just
ask
want
them
the
not to.
experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And I tell you, it's this guy's something. Yeah. Look, I think that it's way too early to make a judgment on some of this stuff. And I do think that I think it's positive that when you are losing guys, you're losing guys to blue blood programs, and you're attracting the guys that he wants. So there's really not an excuse at the end of the day. By the time you get to year 3 and 4, you should be able to expect that BV needs to be there, working on national championship talk. Otherwise, I mean, this is what Oklahoma's about, is national titles. And everybody, all of us want to see one. It's been, 23 years. So it's time. But, that being said, it takes, you don't, look, man, when you put something in the oven and it's supposed to bake for an hour and you take it out in 30 minutes, it's probably not going to be as good as it would have been in an hour. And you have to expect that this is the same way. It's going to take him time. The portal speeds things up some, but I think it may have been you that was saying this. The jury's still out on whether or not that's the right way to go about it, building your program all the way, right?
Well, yeah, because look at Georgia and Alabama. They're not taking a ton of guys to the portal. They take 3 or 4
No.
guys to the portal. Otherwise, what are they doing? They're going out there and recruiting 10 defensive linemen. They're building up that room, and then they just let natural selection take its place on that room. That's
we
what
talked
happened.
about that on this show last week, or the last couple of weeks. We've been talking about that relationship recruiting. It's very regimented. The reason that the kid they pulled the scholarship offer from that other kid, right? And because he went to Indiana after having the conversation with Venables and with Coach Miguel Chavis. He had the conversation. He knew, and he did it anyway. And so they parted ways. Is it different than what you're going to see out of Dabo? Yes, it is. Is it going to be, is it going to be? Well, I kind of lost my train of thought there. I saw this. Will he have a 2,500-yard passing season? Yeah, Jackson, that's low. That'd be low.
He's going to have probably.
If he's not, he's going to. I think he's going to push 4,000 probably.
Yeah, he needs to have at least 3,500 yards, because here's the thing: he would have probably had 3,500 yards if he wouldn't have gotten hurt.
Yeah, easy that. Well, he could have had 4,000 yards if he hadn't gotten hurt.
Well, he was 900 off, so I think 4,000 would have been a stretch.
He had 400 games a bunch. You know what I mean?
I mean, so maybe if we would have went to the Big 12 championship game, could you have seen him? He had a 4,000-yard season.
Yeah, but I'm saying anything over 3,500 is not definitely out of the realm of possibility if he doesn't go down in the TCU game. You know what I mean? And I'm with you. I think he's. I know we've talked about this a lot. It's great that you have Jackson Arnold back there ready to go if Dylan is hurt again, because obviously we know what it looked like without with the what they had at backup last year, right? And a lot of that has to, you lose Spencer Rattler and Caleb Williams to Lincoln Riley. It's going to be different. I think that he needed to be perfect with this defense, as imperfect as it was a year ago, and he wasn't perfect. And I don't, I think Dylan's going to be good. He was, at the end of the year, he looked great. I think that the expectations that I have of Dylan Gabriel are for you to stop taking coverage sacks, for you to be more aware of certain things, and I'd like to see them let him get out of the pocket and make plays, because he's more to me. He's like that Baker Kyler. He's better out of the pocket. He's not huge, so it's
Yeah, but you're going to see that more now that we have a quarterback that can be behind him that can actually play, like that they're confident in. That's I think the problem last year was they weren't confident in that quarterback room. So it was like we need to protect him as much as possible. And ultimately, he still ended up getting hurt. So I think you'll see him potentially move out of the pocket a little more. But Dylan Gabriel has even said it. One of the things that has been something he is working on this year is being a better pocket passer, because when you get to the NFL, that's something you have to be pretty good at. So I don't think Dylan Gabriel is the reason we lost a lot of big matchups last year. I think there were a lot of reasons.
I think
right?
that's generalizing it and not having paid much attention, because
Well,
it certainly
I would say
it wasn't on Jeff Lebby or Dylan Gabriel
Yeah,
when they
I'll say
lost
this.
football
You
games.
lost your wide receiver coach at the beginning of the season, and you had to bring in an interim guy.
They weren't perfect, but it wasn't on them.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of it because they're learning a new offense. So, it just as we talked about learning a new defense, you're learning a new offense, one that actually is a little bit more complicated than Riley's. Lincoln Riley's offense, the reason why it works so well is because anybody can understand it, especially a quarterback, because it's a look for option number 1, option number 2. If it's not there, run the ball. If you're a wide receiver, you're just running this route, right? Lincoln Riley's offense is really simple, but it's so simple it can be ran into multiple formations. So
Right.
like his playbook might have had more plays in it. That's what might have made his complicated, is learning all those plays and how you can run the same play in different formations. But with Jeff Lebby's, the quarterback has to run through all their progressions. The wide receivers might have more complicated routes, and I'm going to be honest, the wide
I
receiver
think that a
room
lot of the
did not
timing
impress me
stuff.
last year. Too many drops, too many bobbles. 3 of Dylan Gabriel's interceptions, I'd say, if you could say, were wide receiver errors.
He had 6
the wide
all
receiver
year,
bobbled
right?
the ball and gave the ball to the defender, like the one against Kansas.
Mm-hmm. And then the Baylor game, we talked about it last night. He had a hold on him, and there was 2 other balls that got tipped off of a receiver's hand. That was 3 of his interceptions were in the Baylor game. Not one of them. You could probably put the third one on him. The first 2 weren't. They didn't call pass interference on one of those plays to Braden, right? And then you had again, any number. It's not. I am not the guy that's going to freaking allow Dylan Gabriel or Jeff Lebby to catch strays over what happened last year. Were they perfect?
A lot of people
No.
forget. A casual football fan that does not follow college football outside of just Oklahoma will forget that Dylan Gabriel I believe it was the 2022 season, had a left clavicle fracture.
Right.
So he was out for pretty much the whole season.
Yeah,
he played in 2.5 games.
Yeah, exactly.
2 games and a quarter.
Right.
So he was out for left clavicle fracture. So he's coming back. He's got to shake off the rust from that, then gets hit with a concussion. So it's like, I am under the impression that outside of the Florida State game, Dylan Gabriel really didn't have a great opportunity to shake off the rust.
No, he didn't. And look, and you go out and you put up 50 against Tech. You put up what, over 30 again in the Florida State game. They had Florida State on the ropes. Another
really good team.
And Florida State is one of those teams that they're dark horse picks to get to the playoff and national title contenders, they think. I don't know that they're that far.
I don't know if they're title contenders, but I would definitely I
think that if you can win
a
Clemson,
playoff team would be a good pick.
Right. If they get to the playoff, that means that they beat Clemson. And they probably, look, they've got that LSU game again. If they can win that one, that puts them a long ways toward it. What I'm getting, maybe they do, maybe they don't. I'm telling you that I think Florida State is very good. And just like everybody else, except for the games that he literally wasn't in the game, Dylan Gabriel, they were in every game. Should they lose like that 5 times next year? Probably not going to happen. I don't know that I can look at this schedule and really tell you that Oklahoma shouldn't be favored in all but maybe 1 or 2 games.
Shoot, Oklahoma should be favored in all of them outside of Texas.
I think probably so. Even though you've got to go on the road to Kansas, I think that, it's going to depend on health of, Jalen Daniels at that time. I think if Jalen Daniels is healthy, they're dangerous, man.
Do we see another 6-0 Kansas going to play Oklahoma?
I'll tell you what, that'd be a heck of a game, wouldn't it? So, I think that that's a fun one. That's one of those ones you're going to look at, and it's going to be, you don't get TCU till the end of the year, right? You get BYU at the end of the year. These are two theoretically tough games. I tend to feel like TCU is about to have a hangover from losing all those super seniors, but I think that they're also learning a new offense because as we know, that offense that Jeff Lebby runs is what they're doing at TCU, and these guys, it's not the same thing as what Lincoln did or what Garrett did. So I think that they're probably, I still could see them winning 7 or 8 games. I don't, but I feel like, again, you should be favored in that game. You should be favored. You don't have to play Kansas State, which has been the biggest thorn in Oklahoma's side for 5 years. You know,
Yeah, I think TCU is going to be a 6 or 7 win team this year. I'm not high on them.
yeah. We'll wait and see how it goes. I do like Sonny. I think that he's doing a good job. I think Malcolm Kelly's doing a good job down there as a recruiter and a wide receiver coach. So yeah, I could see them being a little better than I think, but I can also see them losing to Colorado week 1.
Man, that would be a storyline.
Wouldn't it? But I mean, listen, if you look at what Shedeur Sanders is, he's the kind of guy that can help you win a lot of games that you may not win. He's got to prove it at this level, but he's got the skill set, right? I mean, I can see them. They're going to shake things up a little bit in the Pac-12, and it looks like they're about to be a Big 12 member again. And good for that. Good for the Big 12. I think that's important for them. But it's it's going to take time to learn. And listen, I love Kendall. I think Kendall's a great coordinator as well. He's not one to really hang around too long. So right now, he's been bouncing a lot, right? We'll wait and see what TCU does. We'll wait and see what. And listen, do that again. I want to see you do that again, and then we'll talk. Right? Have we answered cornerbacks opposite of? Who are you talking about? Opposite of Woody? Opposite of. I mean, the corners. I think Makari Vickers is gonna get some playing time probably. I think that obviously you have the JUCO kid, he's looking really good, but I think that Woody probably plays a big part in that, don't you?
Woody
As far
and
as
Key. Woody and
like
Key. And then you probably see Josiah Wagner.
Josiah, yes, I was about to say him too. That dude is a dog.
Yeah.
That kid is a dog. I went to the All-American Bowl in San Antonio and got to see Makari and Josiah and Samuel Masijo, by the way, and they were all great. But Makari shut down half of the field. Nobody threw at him all day.
Yeah, Gentry will probably get to play too, but I don't know if he plays over Key.
Who's that?
Gentry Williams.
Gentry. Yeah. Isn't Gentry
more Rowe too.
Huh?
You have Jaden Rowe too.
Yeah. Look, I think that there some of these things that we're talking about here, and you're asking the stuff, Bishop, and I like it because I'll tell you, we're asking these questions, and so is this coaching staff, right? I mean, if you're looking at what this look, I think it's all about have the staff made the adjustments that they need to make, and how they do things. I think it's fair to ask questions about management of the game if that's what you want to do. I don't think that it was really as much about that, and I'm of the opinion that when you play fast, you always play fast. If you're an offense, it's just not it's not a slow down game. That's not a slow down offense that they run there. So you have to know that your defense has got to be a little better and be able to deal with a couple of 3 and outs every once in a while, right? They need to get better. They need to get better on both sides of the ball. But I think that I feel good about the offense because of what it did a year ago. And I keep hearing everybody say that they're so far ahead of where they were this time last year. It's night and day. So you expect improvement, How many games they're going to be, like you said, I think maybe 1 or 2 games that they're not favored in. And it would be Texas and maybe a road game, the BYU road game. I could see that probably happening. Right?
I don't think BYU is going to be that good this year.
I don't know that they are or they're not. I'm telling you, that's a hard place to go. And Oklahoma's never beaten them. So it's, it's late in the year. It's a night. I guarantee you it'll be a night game, and it's going to be a tough place to go in and play. I watched them beat the brakes off of freaking Texas the last time I went to that stadium. And that place was wild. And so and I think that's, listen, whether or not they can beat them or not is not what I'm talking about. It's about, but they could, because of, I don't think that they're going to be as good as Oklahoma, but it's one of those places you could see them stumbling, right? If you're
Oh,
going to
100%.
have,
Yeah, and there's a
yeah,
good chance me and a couple other guys will be out there too, so
I
y'all
can't wait for that.
stay
I'll be there. I
yeah,
guarantee
yeah,
you I'll
y'all
be
stay
there.
tuned for that one.
Yeah, that's going to be fun. We're going to do a show from there because this is the
That's
end of
that's
the
that's the
year.
goal, that's the plan.
This is the end of the year. This is when it's going to start getting real, And so, BV's philosophy is top 15 scheme. Yeah, listen, I'm with you, man. O line is not a big question mark. They've got 3 of their 5 returning starters coming back to the offensive line, and then they've got a left tackle from Stanford who's already been big time, and so that was a big pickup for them in the portal as well. Fail BV, you're failing on these ones. You're just grasping here a little bit, bro. Yeah. Only way BYU wins is if OU can't stop the run. I would agree with that. Weston, I think you're right on the money with it. But again, and I'm not saying they're going to lose. I think that it's one of those games that you need to go in there and win and play well in, and let's see what happens. I think a lot of things can happen in the positive. I think that with this schedule, you have to expect at minimum 8 wins, but I don't know that I can see 4 losses. Right? I mean, I just don't know. I think I may be able to pick 4 teams that I think might win, but I don't think all of them do. Right? you know, I can pick 4 teams that, okay, yeah, I can see that, but I'm not picking that all 4 would ever. You know what I mean? Not with this schedule. Sorry. Halton Gilliam going to be X factors. Yeah, listen, you're right. You're right. And Rondell Bothroyd, Deshaun McCullough, man. If you see him doing that cheetah roll the way that it seems like it's headed in that direction, this kid was a freshman All-American. you know, I think that you're going to see some improvement there, and I really think if they just did similar to what they did a year ago, and they have a top 60 defense, I think that they're at 10 wins. That's just how I feel about it. But we're gonna find out. We're gonna find out, and either BV's seat's gonna get a little warm or it isn't. But I would say that they have an opportunity to go big here, and I'm still planning to give them time. I think they're still young, so I could see 8 wins, but I have a hard time believing that it's going to be 8. That's just me. Just me. Yeah, Christian Wilkins. Really? No, there's no doubt about that. Yeah, I've never questioned that, Robert. Not once. Uh, we all know that Lincoln is one of the most gifted play callers in college football history, probably. There's a lot of people that love to have Lincoln or Garrett Riley, even for that matter. Now they're hot commodities. Now, whether he's an all-around great coach, that's a different discussion. But can he call an offense? Yes, he can, unless they play Clemson and Brent Venables. Oh, PG, what do you think? Halton, grown man, strong. Yeah, I like that, Hank.
Yeah, no, I think Halton will be a big pickup for Oklahoma next year. I think he'll be a pretty good defensive lineman. I think he'll have a big year.
Man, yeah, I'm excited, man. I'm excited. Folks, make sure that you have hit the like button if you haven't already. Get on there. You got an opportunity to hear the sponsors of Voice of College Football, and you can always get in touch with myself at Twitter at BirdieManDub, and we are also on the Hall of Fame College Football Podcast on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Even we've been running a lot through there, so make sure you check us out. PG, tell everybody how to find you and what you got coming up, man.
Yeah, y'all can find me the PG Show, all one word, on Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube. We have been kind of slow on recruiting interviews. Not sure if we have any in the pipeline, but we're going to be talking a lot of recruiting, especially at the Champion Barbecue and everything comes up. So definitely pull up over there if you like a little bit of insight to recruiting and, hey, you just want to hear a fan's opinion.
Listen, man, it's and he's being you're being awfully not talking yourself up very much there, PG. He's got his finger on the pulse of this recruiting class. I definitely tune into PG and love to hear what he has to say. He's close to all these guys and kind of knows he's a lot of interviews he's doing with these recruits. So if you want to know what's going on, you should get over to the PG show. Check that out. Make sure you become a subscriber as well. Yeah. So this was number 116. I think they've done them all in a row. We kept it together, held it down for him today, PG. Thank you for coming on to the show.
Oh, no, you're welcome.
Yeah, man, it was good stuff. Enjoyed it. We'll have to do this again sometime if they let us. But hope everybody else enjoyed that in here as well. PG, yeah, he's trying to be pretty low key there, wasn't he, Hank? That's how he rolls. He's just doing it. Again, I'm excited about the upcoming season. We're now inside of 90 days away from kickoff. Time to gear up and get gear ready. So check everybody out. Hey, again, catch us at the Hall of Fame College Football Podcast, and we will see you guys on the next one.